So, but again, Lindsay, it's awesome speaking to you. It's been a while. What have you been up to?
Well, I recently moved to Georgia over the summer, so I'm no longer in Arizona.
Right.
I actually I grew up in Georgia. I'm originally from California, but I spent my teenage years, college years, and then the first police department here in Georgia. And we've been wanting to get back for a while, and the the ducks lined up over the summer, or actually in the spring, and then we came out over the summer. And so we're just getting settled into our 8.5 acres we have out here, and it's
Nice.
different for our two kids. They're desert babies, so they went from having no trees in their backyard to having all the trees.
That's good. That makes it kind of exciting for them, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, it's a little change of pace because I mean, me and my husband, we grew up moving around, and people always ask, were you a military kid? It's like, no, my family was in the music business, so we moved wherever the music was. And then
Okay.
my husband, my mother-in-law, she just likes to explore different places, and so this is the first move for our kids. So it's been good here, and I've still been able to do my public speaking because I can do that from anywhere because I'm near a major airport. I fly out, I speak, I come home, and mainly I'm at home with my family. I get
Good for
to
you.
be home with my crazies as much as they drive me nuts. I love being with them.
How much are you getting out on the road?
I probably travel. If I had to put a number on it, I probably go out of town at least 9 out of the 12 months. I
Okay.
speak somewhere. Yeah.
What's that? So, where have you been lately? Anything like super interesting, or someplace where you've never been before, and you're like, that was actually kind of cool.
That's always fun because I like picking places where I haven't been, or I like getting the opportunity. So I spoke in Chicago in September at the International Association of Women Policing conference, which was really
Okay.
cool because that's an international crowd. And I mean, there were women from literally all over the globe. And I mean, from parts of the globe that are just getting into women being law enforcement. And they
Okay.
had a really cool cultural night where the women wore like their cultural garb, and so that was like you see all of these different things and you get into conversations with people, and English wasn't everybody's, first language.
Right.
So they did have like the translators, they were wearing translators, they had some in-person translators, so it was really cool. So Chicago was great. I ran into some people I knew there, I made some connections, and then where was I after that? I got to keep up because my brain is all over the place sometimes. Um, I'm drawing a blank. But I did speak.
Were you in Suffolk?
Yes, there we go. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. Yes, Suffolk County, New York. They were fantastic. I always tell people, like, when you get out and travel in law enforcement, you'll see that our communities react differently to each other. You go on the East Coast, as soon as they find out you're active or retire, your family, like you're in.
Yeah.
And I noticed, and even in Georgia, we were very tight. I mean, we had that camaraderie, and we were together all the time. We've been at each other's weddings. We've been there for each other after critical incidents, bad relationships, like all the things. But Arizona, I have some good friends in Arizona, but I didn't make those friends until later in my career there because the police culture is just different. It just doesn't seem as tight um,
Okay.
as as the East Coast. So yeah, so I was in Suffolk. Long Island was fantastic. They really rolled out the red carpet. I got really good feedback. It was an executive leadership training, so I got
Okay.
good feedback from the leadership that was in the room after my presentation. Because I tell people, listen, I get a pension, not a paycheck. So I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I'm going to be respectful. And everything I say is true and it will help make things better. Um, and then I'm actually flying out to Boston on Monday to speak
Okay.
at an accident event. So
Boston's an interesting place. It's like a mini New York, but those that you'll get it because they're another tight knit crew. and
Mm-hmm.
and they pull you in, which is, and you're right, there is a different vibe in different parts of the country, but without a doubt. And it's cool that you get out to see it. Do you get a chance at all to bring your family with you? What do they think of you actually being out and speaking and such?
It's, I think for my husband, so I'm the extrovert, he's the introvert of the relationship.
Okay.
So for my husband, I think he looks at this as like my natural progression. Even if I had still been on duty, been active law enforcement, I would have gotten to this point at some point in my career or post career. My husband and I speak together as well. He's not in law enforcement. He actually works in retail. That's how we met. Our kids love hearing the how mommy and daddy met story because when I was working here in Georgia at Gwinnett County Police Department, my husband was loss prevention at Target, and I worked that area, and I would arrest his shoplifters. And
Okay.
so
So,
they love hearing that story. So he tells the non-law enforcement significant other side of it, and also, so it's kind of cool to watch Jason be able to speak to the wives and girlfriends in the room, but also speak to the male law enforcement. Just men react differently than women do when it comes to emotions. And so he really speaks to that. I mean, he'll get emotional sometimes, especially when we're talking about the kids. And
yeah.
some of those SWAT guys in the room will come up to him afterwards, and Jason's like tall, bald, and bearded, and they're like, dude, I was cool until you got emotional. Like I was holding it in, and then you just broke me. So it's fun to do. And then to answer your question, we get to take the kids with us. We try to pick at least one speaking engagement a year to take the kids with us. So we brought them to Atlanta 2 years ago, before we were
Okay.
living here. Um, and that was for cops. We spoke for cops, and then we spoke to an FBI group in San Diego. So we got to bring the kids. And actually, next month we're going to be speaking in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we're going to take the kids with us.
That's beautiful. I was in Myrtle earlier this year, and it just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Uh, so the progression for you seems to have been pretty natural, huh?
Yeah.
Which is that's a good thing, because I think one of the things that I found, and especially dealing with uh, yourself and saves, is the idea that anything that happens needs to be like held inside is wrong. It
Mm-hmm.
just in my thing, that's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't ever deal with the elephant in the room, he just takes up the room. So and the more you talk about it, then they shrink. And now it's like I was talking to that guy I met out in Vegas at SHOT Show, and we were talking about it. And I said, it's like a service dog now. It's around. I see it. I know it's there, but it's not a big thing. If I need it, I know to go to it, but I don't make it the central part of our existence, nor do I make it like never talk about it at all. What are your thoughts on, and it doesn't have to be obviously a shooting or say, but just those large traumatic events that everybody goes through.
So where I think people get stuck in, because I mean, I definitely can speak for myself, and I've watched other people on their journey of after a critical incident, learning how to speak about their critical incident. So what you get stuck in oftentimes is, do I have to talk about this forever? Like when you decide to talk about it, right?
Right.
And I try to remind my audiences, like, remember, we're in the business of trauma. It's going to find you one way or the other, whether it's directly, like physically, mentally, vicariously, however it is, it's going to find you. And to think that you're the only one to be going through what you're going through, like you're in denial. And I'm not trying to be negative about that, but the person next to you has gone through the same thing, but we don't talk about it. I mean, to me, it's no different than in my presentation, I get into the year leading into my shooting, dealing with postpartum depression, and
Okay.
how that really helped me after. And I didn't realize that what I learned during that year of healing and learning to live with it, and gaining coping skills, I was able to use some of that same stuff after my shooting happened. So I think, and but then also, okay, I talk about my shooting, right? And as I go along, because as of yesterday was my 6-year shooting anniversary. And
Happy second alive day.
thank you. I appreciate that. And I just real quick, October is my full circle month because my birthday is October 3rd, and then I get to end the month with my alive day. So I think it's brings a lot of reflection and just perspective, just to life and everything. But as I've gone along, I'm like, okay, well, I want to talk about something else. And as my presentation has progressed, I still talk about the shooting, but I make it smaller and smaller of my presentation because I'm not just my shooting. And I think we get stressed out because that's all everybody wants to talk about after something like that happens. Brian, I'm sure you can attest to that. Like, even I had a freak out moment when you just threw that in there about how many times you were shot. And I was like, I'm sorry, could you run that back, sir?
Yeah.
Like, you should have mentioned this at the beginning of the conversation. So, but you just have to find that balance and remember that you were a person before you got on the job. You were a person before your critical incident, and you're going to continue being a person. My shooting that happened 6 years ago doesn't encompass my whole life. Yes, it's something that happened to me, but I mean, I was on my kids' parent services board back in Arizona, and I was just I was a stay-at-home mom for all everybody knew. And then they would, hold on, we heard that. I was like, yeah, that was, so it's just finding that balance and remembering that what we go through and the words that we speak about our incidents can grab somebody else and be like, I didn't even think about that. When we talk about our significant others and we talk about extended family, when we talk about our kids, that's something I talk about too, because we act like kids don't know anything. And they're probably some of the smartest non-jaded beings around at a certain age. And we act like they don't feel anything, and they feel everything.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because there is, when you get out in the beginning, I think everybody does the same. You start out with, well, I just need to tell about what happened to me. And then the longer you're at it, the more you realize, you know what, there was so much more before and so much more after that this isn't everything. There's a lot more to it. But I mean, when Armor asked me to work in this role, that was one of the things that we talked about, is like, there's more than one person gets affected in trauma, and your significant other and your children, absolutely, they know. But whether you come home with a physical scar or not, that's plays no, never mind. It's and yeah, like you say, the more you go on and you let boots on the ground know, hey, don't go home and go, everything's okay, when it's not, because it doesn't help. It really doesn't help anybody. It makes things but so much worse. And kids, like you say, they are, good grief, man, they are the best detectives in the world. They read body language. They read, they know all that stuff. And to play it off like they don't is a disservice to them and to your family. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. Well, I like, even like, so my son was 4 when my shooting happened, and I have one of the 3 places I got shot is in my upper arm here, and it was a through and through, and so they just slapped bandages on it. It was nothing. It didn't hit any bone or anything, and I always joke that I was heavier then, so I don't like to call it fat. I just call it my mom's insulation. And so my son wanted to help me change my bandages, and it didn't look as horrible as I thought it was going to look. And so he gets his little gloves on, he goes to change the bandages, and he looks in the front of my arm, he looks in the back of my arm, and he's like, "Are you sure the bad guy didn't just shoot you?" And my stomach dropped because we hadn't said anything about a shooting. I made sure anybody that came to the hospital when he was there or the house didn't say anything. We just said, "Mommy got in a fight and she broke her arm." Not completely untrue, because I did have a broken radius bone.
Okay.
And I was like, what? So the fact that he put that together, and of course I told him another lie, but you know what happens when you tell one lie, you have to tell another lie. So
Yeah.
my therapist suggested we just sit him down and tell him the truth, and we did. He had a couple of questions, and at that age, they're very direct. And
Yeah.
then as time goes on, because he was so young, he understands the world differently. Now he's starting to understand danger and what could have happened. Every few months, his questions got more detailed and more emotion filled about my answers or his own thoughts about what happened or what could have happened.
Right.
So that's why, I tell people just don't do that, and don't get to retirement for your family to hear all the crazy stuff you were doing and shootings you got into. And they're like, "Why? I didn't know that happened," or, "Oh, that's why you were in the hospital that time," because they're there to support us. And if we don't give them all the information, how are they supposed to properly support us?
Exactly. And then you
You know?
always feel from your own thing, you stay in that protector mode, like you're protecting them, but
Mhm.
really it's just it's a lie. It's a lie. You're kidding
Yeah.
yourself, and you're not doing them any good. That's it's funny. My stepdaughter was 6, and she she wanted to taste because I had a feeding tube in, and she wanted to see what the stuff they would feed me through the feeding tube tasted like. And I'm like, sweetie, you don't want to do that. And she's like, no, I do. And yeah, that was like a quarter of a teaspoon. And that was like, blech. But
Yep.
she wanted to the same, like
Yeah.
genuine interest, genuine.
Yeah.
And then every kid reacts way differently than the other. And some
Mhm.
it's super fast, others. But I think for the entire thing, and again, it's just trauma. It it
Mhm.
all takes it all takes a whole load of time. So I started getting involved with this other. It's a thing that's common. It's an app. It's a wellness thing. But we were in Missouri with the Missouri School Board, and there was 12 of us sit down for dinner. And the guy who came up with this whole idea, unfortunately, his wife had killed herself.
Mhm.
And he said, how many here have had somebody in their family commit suicide? And what was shocking was 11 out of 12 had that happen.
Mhm.
And he was even shocked. And we talked, and I said, this is everywhere. That people learning to deal with trauma is probably the hardest thing there is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad people like you are out there just letting people know it's to not be okay is okay, and to be okay is okay. But regardless, there's a lot of a lot of pages in the trauma book.
Oh yeah.
It,
Yeah. Yeah. And
and
you have to take what I just said to somebody the other day. I was on a call, and I said, we have to give ourselves grace after critical incidents. And we have to take time, because think of it like this. This is how I always talk about trauma. Think of trauma as a new person you just met, right? And when I meet a new person, you know, I can decide if I like them. I can walk away from them and, like, okay, maybe I'll have some more interactions with Brian and Adam. They seem pretty cool, and I can decide over time, right? And
right,
there's some people just like right off, right? And then you can, but with trauma, trauma is meeting a new person that you're stuck with 24/7. You instantly become a new person, and so it's hard. You can't separate that new person. And like when I do peer support, so when I talk to people, and I've said things like this before, I want to go back to before. I want to go back to before the incident. I don't like this new person that I am. I don't like my triggers. I don't like that I can't watch fireworks without feeling like I'm going to pee on myself or turn into a turtle. Um, I don't, unfamiliar faces, not faces, but places kind of freak me out still, and things like that. And I said, I don't like any of that stuff. But guess what? I'm stuck with me. So I have to get to know the new Lindsay. I can't just say, well, this is who I am and that's it. I have to genuinely like who I am. And it's taken me time. I still have my moments where I'm like, new Lindsay, listen, I need you to go sit down somewhere. but this is who I am. And just to go back to something that you said, Brian, just even about sharing, one of the things that helped me in our conversation is when you were talking about like some of the crazy thoughts that were going through your head during your shooting, just things about like, oh, my wife had tickets for a show and, all this other stuff. And I said that I laughed because I was like, I had all these thoughts that went through my head. So is that normal? That you can just have like just stuff that doesn't make sense when you think about it afterwards. It's like you literally have bullets flying over your head. And Brian was concerned about, man, my wife, she bought tickets. We're supposed to go to this show tonight. I guess we can't do that.
We were going on our honeymoon in 8 days.
So that helps though. That definitely helps. So you feel it normalizes just the normal things that your body does when you're in a high stress situation.
So I know you're the same. That I know when I first started getting out, the amount of people who would wait and come up after and tell you that just what you said, like I had no idea, like that was okay. And that's part of that. But thank you for doing peer support, because I think without good people doing that, there's a lot of people out there struggling. And I know yeah, you do some work with Randy Sutton, Wounded Blue, and I think Randy's a great guy, and Alan Goodrich is one of his buddies. That's who the Vegas guy I was talking to is. But yeah, you can't be afraid to ask for help. And I'm with you. I will say this with complete conviction and truth. The hardest part for me was not getting shot. It was figuring out, now what do I do with my new life?
Yes,
And I think, and I tell people all the time, man, always have a plan B, because there's no guarantees on anything. And
well, especially now, not to cut
oh,
you off, but in this day and age of policing, like just think when we were still active, you were one mistake away of being that down on the luck person that you were having to go on a call with. Now with social media and everything else that's going on, you're one perceived mistake away from not having your job, not being credible to the public in your community. And so I tell people the same thing, like have a plan B. I'm not saying don't retire from this line of work. I'm not saying don't love it and don't and not to put your all into it, but you have to have something you can pivot to. And I was a medical retirement. I didn't expect to be medically retired at the age of 39. And then it's like, it was cool for a while because it was in the middle of COVID. Boom, I jumped into my kids. They were at home for a while. But then once they went back to school, it's like, okay, what does Lindsay do now? Like, I'm no longer sworn. And even though you don't feel like you wear that, but you do wear that, and it affects you. Now you have to find a new path.
And that's good. There's a buddy of mine, Tony Blauer, he talks about fear, and it's false expectation appearing real. And that's where we worry more in our heads than we deserve to. And because it's not that way really when you break it all down. And it's always fear of the unknown. I'm sure like you, when you woke up in a hospital and you're like, dang, what do I do now? And that's, and it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. People used to come up all the time like, oh, God has a plan. And I'm like, well, next time you're talking to him, tell him to text me or something. So I know what it is, but it does come. You just have to be patient, and you have to have I think the outlook and the right partner, makes a big difference. And I'm sure, Jason's like Ann, where they're there, that's strength behind you, and they know when you're having a moment, and that is imperative. Is like we all shit. That's what year is this now, man? 13? No, 11. But at any rate, 11 years ago, and 12. Jesus, I can't count. But there's still moments that pop up. And it's having that partnership there is huge, I think. How does Jason deal with the notoriety? Because there is some that comes with it.
So what's funny is after Jason and I speak, he actually gets more fanfare than I do afterwards. And I like that. One, because it makes him uncomfortable and I love it. But it goes to show that our significant others' voices are just as important as ours, if not more, because they have a whole nother set of trauma that they go through. Like it's and I don't know if Brian, if you ever felt like this, but anytime my shooting anniversary comes up or it comes up in conversation, you get those comments like, man, I remember the day that happened, or this is what I was doing when I saw the Facebook post, or I got a text message, or somebody called me, or something like that. And it's like, you feel guilty for a little while for being a part of someone's memory like that. But
Yeah.
I'm not the one that caused this. And so Jason has helped me talk through that a lot of times. And I mean, we've been out places before, we've been recognized and things like that. And in the moment, Jason enjoys the conversation. Like he's like, wow, like I'm making a difference here. Like this is different than anything I've ever done. And so he really gets into it. Now, when we're not in that environment, he's out in the backyard chopping down trees, or he's riding his motorcycle. He is not like, I'm a busybody, I love being around people. That's not him. But he likes the making the difference part. We want to be able to keep first responder families together. We have such a high divorce rate. We want to encourage good, healthy relationship, and not just with our significant other, but with the people around us. And so I love the conversations that Jason and I have about that topic. And I like watching him get excited about it. And even though he's an introvert, like if you ever see me and Jason speak, like I kind of look at him like a puppy dog sometimes when he's speaking, because he looks like a different person to me when he's speaking. He really gets into it. And I can tell he's given his all, and it's something that he really, really cares about. And it's something he didn't know he cared about until he had to, so I'm definitely lucky. And the postpartum depression really helped me and Jason be more in tune with each other when it comes to communication, and also when I'm not my best. He's good to like kind of leave me alone or say, hey, tag I'm in, go chill, go for a walk, go for a drive. I'll take care of the kids and everything else. So it's nice having someone who's in tune with you, because I mean, they're going through their own battle as well, because they worry about us.
Exactly. Actually, we did a blood drive here in Milwaukee the December after the shooting, and is that the nephew of the president of the temple who was killed. He was a resident for psychology, and we were talking, and then we sat down with Kenmore, and we got basically a free couples therapy. And that was the problem, is in the very beginning, we were worried so much about upsetting the other. Like I was worried about upsetting her, that we didn't talk, and that became an issue. And then it was like, you know what? After this is not the way we're going to do things. We're just going to be very open. If I'm having a bad day, I'm going to tell you, like I get Botox shots every 3 months. That day I'm going, that's not my best day, and that it stays with you, and that's okay. But you have to be able to talk about it, and you hit the nail on the head. That to better ourselves, we need to be better communicators overall. And, especially I've spoken a number of times and I'm sure you have with recruits, and I'm telling them the same. This is a job. When you're on the job, you bring your A game always, but have a life outside as well. Be more than a uniform. Be a good person first, and everything else comes with it. So if you had, I'm not going to keep you, and I appreciate you spending the time with us. But if you had one lesson that you wish you would have known, and not even in regards to your shooting, but one lesson that somebody would have passed on to you that either they did and you didn't take the advice, or you found out about later, what would it be?
that we are humans, not superheroes. And just because we put the badge on doesn't mean we have to hide everything behind the badge, because superheroes have they've experienced some sort of traumatic event to make them want to save the world, just like the villains have had something traumatic happen to them that makes them want to burn it down. So, we're not Superman, we're not any of them, and I love Superman. I have a little Superman magnet up there, but they all have their weaknesses, just like we do. We are human beings that are in the business of trauma, and that trauma will affect us. And if we don't learn how to properly process that trauma, it turns into physical ailments, it turns into addiction, it turns into infidelity, it turns into overspending, because all those things are instant gratification, and it makes us feel good because we're constantly chasing that high. Sometimes I'll see lights and sirens go by and I'm like, oh man, where are they going? I'm just I love my kids, and I'm like, oh, I'll see you guys after school. I want to go do things. So we have to find things that give us a natural high that doesn't involve danger or trauma. But definitely, like, we're humans, not superheroes. And a lot of us take that to heart, the superheroes. Most first responders and military, they have some superhero relic somewhere, some paraphernalia, a t-shirt, a keychain. And some people identify by that superhero sometimes, but we have to be careful with that. It's okay to not be okay. And I know we hear that a lot, but we really, really have to believe that. And we should never make someone feel less than because they're being a human and they're feeling, because we see a lot of crazy stuff out there. Yeah. And like some people daily, depending on where they work, how else are we supposed to handle that? And we can't gaslight ourselves and say things like, I signed up for this job. Oh, okay. Right. That's great. People sign up for a lot of stuff and crazy things happen that stick with them. And the public can't have that view of us either, because they did a news story about me and my family after the shooting. And that was one of the comments. Like, well, why are we donating money to her family? She has a job, and plus she signed up for this.
Right.
That was rude.
I'm with you on that. And I think that was the first thing I learned was don't look at that stuff, because there's somebody. I watched but some guy did a whole reel of, because they didn't know how many times I got shot. So but I bet he didn't get shot at all. And then you worry about it. And then, like, what am I doing? Who cares? It's not affecting my day to day. And you're right. It's be good. Just be good people, and at the end of the day, be good people, and make something better today for someone else that may last them the rest of their life. And you totally got it made. So, Lindsay, I appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much. Hopefully I'll catch you out on the road. I'd love to see your presentation. Yeah. And again, thank you for doing the peer support. Say hi to Jason for me. Give your kids a hug. And if you ever need anything, you have my number. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And I appreciate what you do. And I'm so glad I reached out to Armor Express, just letting them know, like, hey, this is what the vest did for me. And then to get communication from you, I was blown away that you all had that section of your company in the first place, which I think is fantastic on so many levels. And I was just, it was just, I don't want to say coincidence, but definitely serendipitous that I ran into the Armor Express booth at the conference I was at in Vegas this year. And I was mind blown to see you guys, and just to share that story, and to have them know who I was, and to have my pictures pulled up in somebody's phone, like, oh no, I have pictures of your vest right here. And I was like, oh.
You blew them away. That was awesome. That truly was. So, all right, you take care of yourself, and hopefully we'll meet face to face soon. You be good. God bless you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. You too.